were going to do their. They're going to actually physical. That's what
Well, yeah,
just to make because they have bad hearing.
they've got a really good program there as well.
Yeah.
Because they said there was an ambulance and
What a town work getting themselves into this.
they were pulled over.
Have it set.
I voted. Get off the damn road. If they were all, the whole city was all horned up.
But Watertown's got a heavy program.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying.
When I see, next time I see Megan Hart with
That is too much.
I know.
No, it's next year. Next day, I'll do it every other day. Because you got half. Yeah. You got 5. A little bit closer. I can't hear you.
Kirk Ball. He's been here for 10 years. Kirk Ball. Which one was in the Indian district? If I was in the Indian district, I would run. Hey, district change, this, that.
Morris.
Oh, yes, sure, Ed Morse. Sure, I met him. But I'm not in that district. I'm in Kirk Lund's district, a different district, so I can't put in how many blocks away I am. But
That's it now, but
Could you please take your seats at 7 o'clock?
Gerrymandered
I suppose it's probably a
try and do
26th district.
well, you can usually tell by the flashing around the edges. He moves.
I'm going to get it back here.
You can say aye once in a while if you feel like it.
Yeah. Okay. That does that. Yeah.
Are they all the same size?
Well, it's got multiple pieces to it now.
Okay, I'll call this meeting to order. Roll call by the county clerk.
We have 28 present and 1 absent.
Thank you.
What do they say? They have.
Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Backlund, could you lead us tonight?
I didn't hear them.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Take a moment. Thank you very much. Have a seat. We're in compliance with open meetings law, Mr.
Compliance, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Backlund, second by Mr. Jaco. Any changes, discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, the agenda is approved. Approval of minutes, February 13th, 2024. Mr. Winnicke.
I would move approval of the minutes on Tuesday, February 13th, with the exception, as informed by Supervisor Turville Heights, that Carl Zarling should show as appearing on Zoom rather than in person.
Okay. Anybody else see any additions, subtractions? Seeing none, all in favor of approval of the minutes, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, the minutes are approved. Communications.
You'll find the notice of public hearing, planning and zoning, which is March 21st, 2024, the treasurer's monthly report, 2024 Wisconsin Counties Association district meetings, a report on Wisconsin Counties Utility Tax Association and traffic safety by Supervisor Martin, a report on Lake Ripley Management District by Supervisor Turville Heights, and retirement recognitions.
So retirement recognitions, Mr. Waymire, are you gonna?
Yes, sir. So tonight we have a different way to do retirement recognition. I think many of you during our annual report of our Veteran Service Office heard Yvonne talk about her assistant CVSO and the battle he's fighting right now. And we had hoped to bring him in last month. And so we postponed to this month with the hope of coming in. But he did an impromptu to the office this last week. And you'll see him there right in the middle with Yvonne and the rest of the team giving him his due. For his service not only to Jefferson County, which he started about 12 years ago in April of 2012, but also many of you know he was a veteran of the armed forces too. And so just a recognition of everything he did for both our country, but also we did for our service. And we just want to recognize him in front of the whole county board that he went before he wanted to. But he's fighting a good fight right now. And if you look at him right now, he's looking pretty good for what he's going through. And so as Yvonne reminds us, it's just some of the things that the veterans have to deal with and some of the places we've been. And Gene is an epitome of what to do to fight the good fight. So we just want to recognize him and his years of service.
Thank you. Public comment on, is there any public comment for anything on the agenda? Okay. Sally Williams for item number 15. Right to the podium, Sally, thank you.
Hi, my name is Sally Williams, W2403 Northside Drive, Town of Concord. I just wanted to address the amendment that, on the A3 lot splits. So I'm on the Plan Commission in the Town of Concord, and our town board addressed this at our November meeting. Prior to that, I discussed it with Matt at the zoning office, just over the phone, and he explained that the process would be similar to rezoning or CUPs and that the town would not have veto power. I asked if we amended our comprehensive plan to not allow A3 splits, if that would make a difference, and he said that the zoning board may try to honor the town's request, but it might not survive a lawsuit. So based on that info, our town board, the Concord Town Board, voted against the amendment mainly because we already limit lot splits on A1 parcels, and so didn't make sense for us to open up lot splits on A3. But then it was at the December 28th zoning committee meeting, and there wasn't a lot of discussion on the amendment at that meeting. Matt kind of went over the towns that voted for it and against it, but then the one comment that was made, Supervisor Nass said, well, for the towns that voted against it, if they don't want the splits, they can just veto the rezoning. So no one corrected that comment, and then the board voted to approve the amendment. So the problem is, of course, it's not a rezoning, and based on my discussion with Matt, the towns would not have veto power. So I just think it's important that you, the county board, and the zoning board should all be on the same page with the zoning office on how this is going to work before you vote on it. I do think that it would be nice if the towns were allowed veto power, and I don't know if there's some way that the amendment could be rewritten to allow for that. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, we'll go to special order of business, a public hearing on the comprehensive plan and farmland preservation plan amendment. I will entertain a motion to open a public hearing. So moved by Mr. Paulson. Do I have a second? So moved by Mr. Jekyll and Mr. Morris. Public hearing is open. Any comment concerning this comprehensive plan amendment? Anybody on Zoom? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion to close the public hearing. Moved by Mr. Paulson, second by Mr. Jaco. The hearing is closed. Okay, resolutions, recognition, outgoing supervisors. And there's a list of those resolutions in your packets. There are 5 current former board members here tonight who are not seeking a re-election this April. On tonight's agenda, we have resolutions to thank them for their service to Jefferson County and wish them happiness and health in the years ahead. Actually, I believe all 5 are here. Those supervisors are Dan Herbst, who has represented the 6th District since April 2018, Jeff Johns, who represented 11th District from February 2019 to December 2023, Jeff Smith, who represented District 12 since April 2020, Anita Martin, who has represented the 13th District since April 2020, and Joan Fitzgerald, who has represented the 26th District since February 2019. I move that we adopt resolutions 2023-73 through 2023-77. Second by Mr. Gulig. Questions, discussions? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Hearing none. Thank you, and thank you for your service. And I hope we can count on some of you in the future to serve on commissions and boards and things like that, because we'll always need people for those positions. And again, thank you for your service.
So if everyone could come up as a read your name, we actually have nice resolution certificates for you for your service. So Dan Herbst. Jeff Johns. Jeff Buck Smith. We got to add the Jeff part in there, sir. Anita Martin. And Joe Fitzgerald.
Thank you. Takes us to overview of fiscal year 2023 results and proposed fiscal year 2024 budget amendment update. Mr. Waymeyer.
So Mark and I are going to double team this tonight. So we went through several of this as a preview last month of what we're proposing and recommending. That went through both the HR committee in some cases and the finance committee to amend the 2024 budget. But as we talked through year-end results in 2023 with the finance committee, we thought a few slides with Mark to kind of talk what happened and why we're making some of the recommendations prudent fiscally and some of the plans and projections that we have in place. So we're going to talk through that briefly with you all too before we make the final decisions related to the amendments that are being proposed. So we're going to start with Mark, then we'll transition to our plan for 2024 and some of the key highlights, and then be available to answer any questions. So Mark.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you. I'm going to start with this presentation here that we handed out. It should be on your desks. The first page is entitled Financial Results by Fund, and I'm just going to walk you through that page real quick. So on the left-hand side, we've got all the different funds. We've got 8 different funds here in the county. We begin with the beginning fund balance, and in the accounting world, all of our revenues and other sources of funds are presented as negative numbers, and the expenses are presented as positive numbers, which is important when you get to the end, the far right column. So we begin with the audited fund balance on the left, and then we add revenues that we took in, and overall, we took in $108 million in revenues. The third column over is other financing sources, and in this case, that consists of two different things. One is transfers in from other funds, so there were transfers between funds that this board had authorized. And then the one exception to that is under MIS department, where we had a $698,913.88, and that represents proceeds from financings that we did. And we did two financings last year. One was a lease to purchase the phone system, and then we did a general obligation promissory note that essentially refunded that instrument. And we did that so that we could, first of all, save some money. We saved a little bit of interest. But secondly, we did that so we could put the debt issuance on the levy, on the debt levy, which allowed us to do some other things with the general fund levy, which is subject to levy limits. Moving forward, under the expenses column, we spent $131,713,585. And then under other financing sources, you'll see there those represent transfers out to the other funds, so those offset the other financing sources. The anticipated adjustments column are twofold. First of all, we're still getting some invoices in that are the result of the water damage we had in the Clerk of Court's office over the Thanksgiving break. And we're anticipating about $230,000 that's coming in yet. And then the $50,000 of revenue that you see coming into the capital project fund is actually a refund for the deductible from, I believe it's going to be the contractor that caused the damage in the first place. So they're going to give us our deductible back that we had. We were insured for that amount, less the deductible, and so we've made arrangements with the contractor to be reimbursed for that deductible. So the only thing we're out is time, and that's important. So all of those sums together equal the ending fund balance, and we're ending the year with $85.7 million in fund balance. And then the fund result or gain or loss, which I think is the piece that we're going to talk through tonight, what I think is the interesting piece. And again, remember, when you see a positive number, that represents a loss, and negative number represents a gain. So in a general fund, we had a $600,000 loss. For financial statement purposes, when we present the financial statements and our audited financial statements, we'll combine the MIS fund with the general fund. And so when we look at the financial statements, what you'll see is a loss of $674,608 under the general fund caption. Going down, the health department had a gain of $113,000. Human services had a loss of $466,000. Debt service fund had a loss of $1.3 million. That was due to the application of some premium funds that we applied towards debt service payments. And we had a premium on the sale of our last bond, rather sizable premium. Capital project fund, it should come as no surprise that we spent $22.6 million, and that was this building project. The highway department had a gain of $1.4 million, and we'll go over why that is in just a moment. MIS had a loss of $74,000, and then the fleet fund had a gain of $564,000, and I'll state the reasons for that in just a moment as well. So, for the general fund, we had a planned deficit of $4.3 million, so coming in with $674,608 of a loss is good news. We were planning to spend much more than that, so you might be wondering what happened between the time we adopted the budget and the time that we closed out the year. So two big things, really. Interest rates rose much higher than we expected. When we meet with our financial advisors in August, and in August of 22, interest rates were at about 2.1%. And right now they're at about 5.1%. So our investment advisors at the time advised us somewhere between $1 million and $1.5 million is what we should budget, and we took the conservative approach, and as we always do, and thank you to the Finance Committee for their support with that. We budgeted $1 million. Interest rates doubled since then, and so we yielded about $1.7 million more than what we budgeted. So that was a huge amount and really helped out this year. The other thing is that sales tax collections exceeded budget by almost $1,927,000 to be exact. And again, a very, very tough number to pin down. When we saw interest rates starting to rise again back in August, what we thought is because those interest rates are rising, we're going to see spending go down, but that did not happen at all. And in fact, just in last December, we saw the largest sales tax collection that we ever saw in the history of the county. It was about $1 million for 1 month. And then finally, wages and benefits of 1.32 million under budget, and that's due exclusively to vacancies in all departments in the general fund. And most departments we tracked on or under budget. So that really helped us. Yep, I got the next one. On to the other funds, the health department, they have a public nursing program that is levy funded. However, they were able to obtain some grants, and that diverted money away from the levy funded activities into activities that are funded by grants that are reimbursed. So we had a good year in the health department fund, wound up with a small gain there. Human services, very complicated, but I tried to boil it down as best I could. We did have some placements that did cost us some money. And that's why the counseling TPA provider payments exceeded budget last year. We had high placement costs, and then there was a transfer out to the general fund of excess levy of $445,080. And if you're wondering how we calculate that, basically we take the requested carryovers from Human Services Department and subtract what their ending fund balance is to arrive at the number that's available to transfer back to the general fund to use for other purposes. Highway was at near break even until finance posted our pension adjustment, and the pension adjustment is something that is dependent on a lot of different things. Mostly it's assumptions that the WRS has regarding things like experience, like when are people gonna die, when are they gonna retire, what's our market rate of return gonna be, and in almost every case, our assumptions were better than expected, and that's why we had a good adjustment to the positive. We had a negative expense adjustment in the highway shop of $1.4 million. Sure. I mean, we can get really geeky about this, but mainly it's because the highway shop is what we call a business type activity. It's run like a business. The rest of the funds in the county are not business type activities. They're what we call governmental funds. So the accounting for the highway shop is different. It's more of a like business type accounting, whereas the governmental funds are on a different basis of accounting called modified accrual. That really helps track with budget better. The main differences there are, like, for instance, capital assets. In our governmental funds, we expense the entire capital asset. In the highway shop, they buy an asset and they depreciate it. So the only thing that you see as an expense is the depreciation, whereas in general fund, you see the whole capital asset purchase. And that's why I say when we track with budget, we want to make sure our inflows and our outflows are equaling each other, and that includes large purchases like capital assets. It's a little bit different in the business type activities because they don't run that way. I'm happy to answer any questions about those bases of accounting. I can probably talk all day about that. And the same is true for the fleet fund. So when you see a large gain in the fleet fund, that's just because we spent a lot of money on new vehicles, but you're only seeing the depreciation from those new vehicles. You're not seeing the actual purchase of the vehicles itself. So it looks like we have a large gain, but the truth is that most of that fund balance is wrapped up in the value of our vehicles in the fleet fund. Which leads us to the next slide, which is fund balance policy application. So we wanted to talk about this tonight before we vote on a rather large budget adjustment to let you know how we think we can afford this. So first of all, I think we can afford this because we had a much better year than we expected to have in almost every fund, and especially in the general fund. Our fund balance policy application is based on the policy that was passed by this board and amended a couple times. We start with the ending fund balance from last year, and we apply what our either gain or loss is. So right now, we're expecting to have $38,777,767 as of the end of 2023 in fund balance. And from there, we subtract things that we can't spend because they're already spent, like inventory, long-term receivables, prepaid expenditures. Restricted fund balances are amounts that you'll see in the carry forward sheets that are included in your packages. So everything that's in there is already applied to this in this sheet, and you'll see what the result is at the end. I'll talk about that a little bit. So the restricted fund balances are restricted by an external source. They can only be spent for a specific purpose. So we can't just do whatever we want with them, so we got to subtract them out of that formula. Committed fund balances are committed by this board, so they're not externally restricted, but they're already committed for a specific purpose. Again, that comes from the sheet that you have in the packages, and assigned fund balances are the same way. Most of the committed fund balance is what we call incurred but not reported claims, and those are claims that are outstanding that haven't been reported to our insurance companies yet that we're estimating. So we estimate that people are going to sue us for about $1.15 million. That's based on an actuarial study that we do every year for claims that are outstanding but not reported yet. And then under the assigned fund balances, we have all of the benefits that are vested. So if everybody left today, we would have enough money to pay everybody out their sick pay, their vacation pay, their holiday pay, and everything that we owe them, we can pay them. And then finally, we add back in the realized gain or loss on the market value of investments. And we decided to do that a while ago because we hold our investments to maturity. So when the market fluctuates up and down, it really doesn't matter to us because we're going to hold our investments and sell them when they mature. So we don't care what the market thinks they're worth at the time, but our accounting rules make us mark them up or mark them down depending on what their value is on the market as of today. So that's all of what we call our buckets in the Finance Committee. And then finally, we get to the working capital requirement. Our goal is to have 3 months of working capital, and that's 3 months of all county expenses, less certain things like one-time grants, large capital expenses, one-time capital expenditures. We take out the library, and we also take out debt service. To arrive at our net available unassigned fund balance. So if you look at that, it's a negative number. We're under our 3-month goal, but we're above our 2-month requirement. So the requirement under the current policy is to have 2 months of working capital in reserves. We're over that, but we're under the 3-month goal by 3.2 million. We have a couple things that we think are coming up that are going to help us. First of all, you'll see in this proposal from the land sale, we're proposing to put $1 million of the land sale back into the fund balance to restore that goal. We do see things improving over the course of the year. I think that Fed rates are going to go down. I think there's going to be external pressures as we move towards the election from both the legislature and the executive office to move interest rates down, and I think that's going to probably stimulate some spending. So I have a positive outlook on where we're going towards the end of the year. This fund balance, I think, can be restored by the end of 2024. Don't hold me to that because you never know what's going to happen over the course of the year, but I do think that if everything that comes to pass as we think they're coming to pass now, we're going to see a positive balance when we review this again next year. And that is the end of my presentation. I'll turn it over to Mr. Whitmer.
So kind of get into the transition piece, and Mark kind of covered down on this a little bit, but I just want to kind of reemphasize where some of this is at. So just for comparison purposes, on the left side is what the 2022 budget impact was to that fund balance policy. And you can see that by policy, we also had to increase the fund balance by about $1.2 million by the increase in spend. I also remind as part of that planned spend down, or what we came in as that $4 million mark, included $2 million to pay off debt early and reduce the taxes. So again, that wasn't that number that we talked about and why we end up in a pretty positive spot. So Mark talked through some of the positives, and we talked about already the proceeds from the potential land sale. We talked a lot about IBNR with the Finance Committee. So that number up there is actually a combination of liability and workers' comp based on last year's actuarial. We've had a couple claims that were probably on a worst-case scenario, have ended up in our favor, and so they dropped off the books. So we expect that number to go down, and we actually expect a number, again, don't hold us into his actuals, look at it, but based on past trends, probably almost 400,000 might be reasonable to go down. But we'll see what the actual numbers are with, we look through attorney fees and things like that. With that being said, that goes out that bottom line. So that's part of what we're looking at. As Mark said, for projections, for investments, we actually rose what we put into operational revenue to about 1.5 million. Based on what we're seeing right now, we think it's reasonable. That number could get it closer to about $2 million. So that's where we're factoring some of those dollars in. Now, the factors that besides the interest rates going down that Mark talked about, some of the funds that are in there right now include our American Rescue Plan Act dollars. As you all may know, we have to have those spent by the last year. So that's partly what we're earning interest on. And by rules, we can turn that interest earned back to the general fund. We also have what we've put aside as we spent down on all the bond funds for the building project. We've earned interest on that. Some of that's going to the project, but some is being returned to. But again, that pot of money is going to decrease. And so the other thing that we've been talking a lot about is looking at the projections for 2025 versus spend, which are a good spot, we believe. But we also are recommending that we look at the fund balance policy. Right now, we have it based on that 3-month. Which is kind of some past practices, but we're seeing new best practices that you look at an actuarial assessment of risk needs analysis, and we think we'll be on the high end of that. So in the resolution for budget amendments tonight, what I'm quickly going to go through is that multi-page color spreadsheet with the reds on it, et cetera. We talked a lot about this last month, so I'm going to go through it pretty quick, but I just want to quick highlight a few things that are in there. So ultimately, we are making that recommendation to add some dollars to the courthouse project. We spent some time with the Buildings and Grounds and Finance Committee describing the various things. Some who saw the tour tonight, you got to see some of the issues related to structure. What we didn't talk about is some of the issues related to electrical issues in the jail and also the vent system, which were outside the scope of the project. And we are recommending we need to get that fixed. We're also looking at programs related to housing, the Federal Empowerment Center. That's a project that Michael's working on that will get us some grant dollars back, but this will kind of be the seed money to help start that going forward. You'll also see here shortly is the finalization of market study increases for various departments, and we'll talk through the 10%, the 7.5 to 9.9%, and 5 to 7.5%. And then we're trying to close out flood mitigation. You'll see a resolution accepting a state and local grant tonight to get reimbursed. This is just to make sure we're covered to close out some projects for flood mitigation property. We think some of that will come back to the county as well. Quickly in administration, we are looking at a website upgrade after our strategic plan. We don't have a full number on it, but we want to make sure we had enough available. We are looking forward with the EMS issues that are out there to do some planning exercises, specifically with Unicity Alliance out of UW-Madison. That has been an entity we've been talking about with our communities. There is a potential for a partner who may help fund this with the county. We'll know more about that very shortly to move that forward. And you can see throughout, we have a couple scanners and copiers that finally just went. And then included in this too, from the CJCC, is our LIFT program, which is the driver's restoration program, and SCRAN, which relates to pretrial monitoring systems. Fair Park, we added 2 things into here. And so later tonight, you're going to meet our new Fair Park director. And as we kind of talk through this, we want to make sure we put the fair in an area for success. And so we've been carrying over funds for a feasibility study. And when I say feasibility study, to look at the market that our Fair Park is in and potentially how it aligns with facilities related to where we're at, or even like a strategic plan related to the Fair Park. So we are recommending some seed money related to that, so the Fair Park Committee can work with the new Fair Park Director to talk about that, to look at the future of the Fair Park. We also added some capital hours. The Fair Park Advisory Board is looking at some recommendation to the Fair Park grounds, and we want to ensure that we had seed money. The prime example is on Highway 18. We have a changeable copy board to advertise events going on. Do we look at making that more of a LED kind of sign? Something like that's been recommended. Parks, nothing significant here outside the fact that in the past under general revenue has been reserve funds for the interurban trail. We're officially moving on to parks because eventually it has to get down there anyhow. Sheriff's Department, besides some of the usual things that are in there, we're looking at 3 main things for the Sheriff's Department. One, based on where the budget was at last year in capital, we did not fund sheriff squads. We have about 4 squads that have over 175,000 miles on it. We're looking at the sustainability of our take-home squad program. So this would allow some money towards the Sheriff's Department, all in for various vehicles to replace. MABIS stands for, it's a test, Mutual Aid Box Alarm System. And what this is our CAD, Computer Aided Dispatch System, is looking at efficiencies with technology to help specifically our fire and EMS to get folks out on the road faster related to our mutual aid system. And then BDAs are booster directional amplifiers. When we switched to our new communication system, we're not always getting clear communication to our emergency rooms of our hospitals. And so what this would help with amplification within our ERs, specifically Fort Healthcare, Watertown Regional, and Aurora Summit. That way, our law enforcement EMS, if something's going on, we know for sure the calls are going in and out. And sometimes things happen in those ERs, and we make sure the public, our staff, and the hospital staff are safe. Human services, 4 main areas. One, we continue to carry a reserve there as well. We've talked a lot in the past about unknown expenses. Mark kind of alluded to one with a placement. We often see hospitalizations also take place and items that can quickly get expensive. Sometimes when we talk about placements, they can be $20,000 to $30,000 a month very easily. We also are starting a new youth crisis stabilization facility, so we added about $150,000 to kind of make sure we have some protection there. We do have a known long-term placement right now based on what the initial calculation was about $240,000 for this fiscal year would be the cost for that placement. That was waiting pending court time. My understanding is the court time might be moved up a little bit, so that number might move down a little bit as a result of that, depending on what happens with the court proceedings going forward. And then there's a couple miscellaneous capital projects and a match for a federal van match because we always need more vans and transportation. And then highway, we talked a little bit about this already, and I just put limit swings. So what we're trying to do is with the carryover now is kind of just built in those swings that Mark talked about. So if it goes negative or positive, we have it covered, that we just don't take it out and all of a sudden go, what happened to $1 million? So what we're trying to show in this is that we're going to maintain that. We also are looking at for various projects and maintenance and some of the costs related to that. We are going to be bringing bids in, I believe, next month related to asphalt, et cetera. So this is kind of make sure in case there's cost increases with inflation, we're covered there, and potentially additional dollars for more projects. And then finally, winter maintenance. Going in December, it was pretty good. And then January happened. And that one big snow event, not talking the events leading up to that snow event and not talking the events after that, was over a $300,000 to $400,000 snow event for the county. So the budget was almost cut in half in just a few weeks for the county. So that's part of the reason we're showing this carryover for winter maintenance. All right. As part of tonight, we're also making a recommendation related to the classification adjustment. And this slide specifically, we refer to an exhibit that failed to make it in. So I'll make a request that it is referred as part of the resolution tonight, that these are included in that requirement. This should go in front of the Human Resources Committee as well. So in Human Services, we're looking at 3 changes to this. Number 1 is our nutrition site manager, specifically up in Waterloo. We had a contract in place for the nutrition site up there, that they would provide that service. There was a contract being paid up to Waterloo to provide those services. That contract is not being renewed. And so that'll be a part-time position that we'll bring on board. So in lieu of that contract dollars going to Waterloo, we'll pay for our staff to run that site. We're also looking at CCS, which is the Comprehensive Community Services. It's a pretty expansive program in human services and keeps getting bigger. It's gotten to the point from a capacity standpoint, we are working with a contract entity. So Human Services board members know you're seeing bigger and bigger bills related to those services and demand for those services. This is a 100% reimbursement program from the state and feds. To help with that program, to ensure compliance, all those notes and everything has to be reviewed. So we would recommend eliminating a CCS facilitator position and replace with the CCS compliance official. Again, this would be a cost neutral maneuver, just like to create the nutrition site manager. And then finally, we're also looking at a part-time role that would eliminate an emergency mental health position that's not filled right now and replace it with an adult protective service staff. We have kind of merged what those two do together because we are seeing some overlap with that. The one thing is we are seeing caseloads increase in adult protective services, and this is just to making sure we can provide the capacity for the unfortunate increasing demand that that area is having. Tonight, you'll see an intergovernmental agreement in front of you. We're creating a CAD, computer-aided dispatch and IT position with the city of Watertown. We're still working some of the final details related to that. We are on a shared software system called CIS. We also have a shared backbone system, redundant system for fiber for 911 dispatch calls. So if we're overfilled, it goes automatically up there. And if we literally need to move a computer, we could start dispatching Watertown and vice versa. We have redundant fiber lines as well. This position could run the programs because as we look at technology, that's quickly changing. And we see as we go into 2025, this will become a cost neutral position. So for Fair Park, one area that we need to explore with Becky will be kind of how we manage the grounds out there in general. And right now, we don't have someone officially in charge of grounds that reports to the Fair Park position. So this facilitates the ability for someone to be designated a leads position to help manage the various events out there and the additional temp staff. Then finally, out in Human Services, we do have a maintenance position that will be retiring. As we look to the future of our facilities in Jefferson County and a more consolidated approach, Central Services and Human Services have talked about transitioning that position to a lead role. So as we look at the big structure in the future, that's all kind of consolidated. The market studies, really quickly, we looked at the things related to our key markets, and we're going to continue to explore this for going into the 2025 budget. But phase was to make pay rates change effective 30 June 2024. We utilized an outside consultant to help look at these as well to ensure we're being competitive. And so we saw several positions that are 10% more off market. Then we saw several 7.5 to 9.9%, and then 5% to 7.4%. Phase two, HR committee is going to continue to look at some things related to that budget and what can we look at for the future of how we look. One thing that became apparent looking at the data is our comparable markets have a bigger min to max span. So where that really impacts us is on the high end of the ranges to be competitive with the market, and that's something we need to be looking at in the future. So the committee looked at using steps to kind of catch people up and move the ranges related to those steps. So each step is worth approximately 2.5%. And so we had about 7 positions, 20 personnel in general that were impacted, that were off, and they would receive those 2-step increases if approved. In the middle band, we had 5 positions or 19 personnel that were impacted, technically 18.5 FTE. And then we have 2 personnel in one position who are in that 5 to 7.4% realm. And they both those would receive 1%, 1-step increase. And then finally, we talked about the proceeds. Our recommendation has not changed from the sale. So that includes $1 million to the Live Local Development Fund for housing, restoration of general fund balance of $1 million, $500,000 strategic plan initiatives, $500,000 towards PACE programs, $200,000 for improvement to parks buildings, and about $160,000 for some final closing costs and related studies. And then the fee schedule, again, I'll respectfully request that these are incorporated into the record as part of the final resolution. For medical examiner, she can only increase her cremation fees by CPI, and we can get to that till the end of the year. CPI, based on the state law, is the nationwide urban CPI, not the Wisconsin CPI, which have been about 7.7%. The urban is about 3.4%, so the recommendation is increase that fee to $227 for cremations. For Sheriff's Department, additional deputy standby time relates to process servicing specifically. We realize we are not covering the cost related to this fee, and that is why the recommendation is being moved by 41 to 75. Quite honestly, in conversation with the chief and the sheriff, we probably should have done this years ago to cover our costs, so this is kind of a catch-up requirement. And then finally, the maintenance staff kind of had some ideas related to Fair Park and just some ideas of lost wages and just how we recover our costs for some of these efforts, and those are the fees they're recommending change. And in opioid, we talked that we want to have an appropriation of about $200,000. As of when we presented to the Finance Committee, we have received a total of $582,000 in the initial rounds, our first settlement round, specifically from distributors and Janssen or Johnson & Johnson, also known as. Our numbers that we can still expect about $1.6 million, but we're seeing roughly $107,000 per year from the distributors. And in Johnson & Johnson, we just have a few more years because they accelerate payments. We're still waiting for the second settlement to take place. We got word across the country they finalized, hit the threshold for settlements, but we don't have our numbers yet. So within this, we've already approved the $40,000 for a gap analysis, really focus on education media. One thing we are looking at is coordination with the Drug Free Coalition, because they also get grant dollars to maximize that. We talked about development of a dashboard for resources and how do we employ that. In some cases, how can we quickly get using technology, getting someone to a crisis call? Maybe we have a deputy in the field or EMS in the field. Can we use technology to get back to an on standby crisis? Just looking at technology to help with that. Looking at medicated assisted treatment, specifically in the jail and outpatient. Harm reduction services for our local communities and first responders. And then just additional programming and peer support for our schools and other certified positions. And then we've talked a lot about the reallocation of broadband money. That'll be part of the official recommendation tonight. So, Mr. Chair, that's what we got.
Thank you. Thank you, Ben. Any questions for Ben? Mr. Gulick?
I have a question. Can you tell us how you came to the amounts on land sale allocation? The $1 million for the Live Local Development Subsidy, and what strategic plan initiatives will be focused on with that 500,000?
So there's two factors when I looked at it from a recommendation. So in general, when the various staff has been looking at the cost to implement the strategic plan, the initial numbers all in would be $4 to $5 million right now, and that's a very preliminary number going forward. So from a housing standpoint, that received a significant amount of input to the point that we had one standalone objective for housing. And so that's, as we look at the strategic plan and the priorities that have been established, that's why that recommendation was made for $1 million. The strategic plan fund for $500,000, that would all have to come back to the county board as part of our budget process to look at final allocation. The idea was to have some seed money available to move forward versus impacting general operational costs to implement those strategies the board has asked us to do.
Any other questions? Any other questions? Seeing none, we'll move on to committee reports, resolutions, and ordinances. Executive Committee, Mr. Winnicky, ordinance, repeal Board of Supervisors rules of order of 2022 to 2024, and recreate Board Supervisors rules of order 2024 to 2026. Page 13.
Okay, this is ordinance number 2023
25.
25. Basically, this is the rules of order. We'll be asking for a vote tonight. This will also come back next month to the new county board and will be passed, and then will become the final rules of order. The list in front of you is 20 pages long. It's highlighted in yellow. For the most part, I don't think you need me to read them. What I will point out is the recommendations in the informal straw poll from last month have been incorporated into these rules. And what that means is that the new rules of order will limit supervisors to serve as chair of only one standing committee at a time. And it sets up a mechanism for placing an item on a committee agenda with the written support of 5 supervisors, and also sets up a mechanism to bypass committee and bring an item directly to the county board with the written support of 9 supervisors. Mr. Chair, I move approval of the ordinance.
Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Paulson. Questions, discussion? Seeing none, then all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It's passed, and it will be coming before this body again next month. Resolution designating official Jefferson County newspaper for county board minutes. Mr. Winnicky.
Resolution number 2023
78.
78. Every 2 years, Jefferson County enters into a contract with a local newspaper to serve as the county's official newspaper for the publication of county board proceedings, which is required by Wisconsin statutes. We solicited 3 bids, one from the Daily Jefferson County Union, one from the Watertown Daily Times, and a third from the Wisconsin State Journal. We also asked the owners of the Jefferson Union and the Watertown Daily Times to provide a quote for both newspapers. And the recommendation is that we enter into the official state newspaper with the Daily Jefferson County Union based on the price per published line and the amount of Jefferson County households that are reached, which is substantially more. The Jefferson County Union reaches 4,350 households, whereas the Watertown Daily Times 2,650, and the the Wisconsin State Journal 822. So I would move approval of resolution number 2023-78.
Second by Mr. Paulson. Questions, discussion? See, just so you know that the Watertown Times has a greater circulation, but it's in Dodge County. Seeing none, all in favor, say aye. 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 Opposed? Hearing none. Mr. Winnicke. This is resolution authorizing the execution of intergovernmental agreement with the City of Watertown for shared law enforcement IT services.
Resolution number 2023-79. A few minutes ago, Administrator Waymeyer talked about the entering into a intergovernmental agreement with the City of Watertown for shared law enforcement IT services. This is actually the resolution for that. Both Jefferson County and the City of Watertown have a need for law enforcement IT services and would benefit from working collaboratively to ensure their systems properly integrate. I would point out that Watertown's 911 serves as a backup to Jefferson County's 911, for example. This agreement, Jefferson County would hire an IT professional who would dedicate approximately 30% of his or her time to providing services for the Watertown Police Department and, of course, 70% to Jefferson County. The fiscal note, this position is already budgeted for in the 2024 Sheriff's Department budget. Any revenue generated from providing services to other partners will be collected into the general fund. Mr. Chair, I move approval.
Second by Mr. Jekyll. Questions? Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, passes by voice. Takes us to item 11, Finance Committee. Resolution authorizing budget amendments to offset fiscal year 2023 department deficits. Supervisor Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Resolution number 2023-80.
Yes.
Correct.
At the year end, the county administrator requests a budget transfer from contingency or general funds to offset department deficit. This resolution will authorize transferring $235,743.82 from the contingency fund to various county departments due to expenditures in excess of appropriations in fiscal year 2023 and increased budget debt proceeds and corresponding principal, interest, and capital expenditures in the MIS department for the initial purchase and financing and subsequent refinancing of the Mitel phone system. The Finance Committee considered this resolution at its March 6, 2024 meeting and recommended forward to the County Board for approval. Fiscal note. County Board per diems exceeded budget amounts in 2023, primarily related to increased meetings and development of a strategic plan. The budget for per diems has increased for 2024. Emergency management, there was cost overruns that exceeded reimbursement in the flood mitigation program. It is planned this round of acquisitions are closed out in 2024. Fair Park, the main reason expenditures exceed budget is because of a very successful animal auction where payouts exceeded anticipated amounts. Medical examiner, autopsy, and transportation expenses exceed budget amounts during 2023. The budget for these line items has been increased for 2024. MIS, the county purchased a new phone system under a lease agreement that subsequently refinanced the lease with a general obligation promissory note. This amendment recognizes that transaction. As a budget amendment, this resolution requires 20 out of 30 affirmative votes from the total membership of the county board for passage. Mr. Chair, I move for passage of this resolution.
Moved by Supervisor Jones, Supervisor Christensen second. Questions? Discussion? This requires a 2/3 vote.
Supervisor Jones,
Yes.
Supervisor Richardson,
Yes, aye.
Supervisor Herbst?
Aye.
We have 28 yes and 1 absent.
Thank you. Item B, authorizing year-end requests to carry over budget appropriation from fiscal year 2023 to fiscal year 2024 and amending the 2024 budget. This again requires a 2/3 vote. Mr. Jones.
Resolution number 2023-81. At year-end, departments are requested to submit carryover requests for funds that are unspent. If the county administrator approves the request, it is reviewed by the Finance Committee and acted on by the county board for approval. The Finance Committee recommends that funds of $60,140,537.39 be carried over from fiscal year 2023 to fiscal year 2024. The classification of authorized positions is amendment, adjustment to grade scale classification for identified positions, modifications to the American Rescue Plan Act allocation, and selected fee schedule are amended according to the attachments to this resolution. Furthermore, the Finance Committee recommends amending the fiscal year 2024 budget by appropriating funds to cover the following projects as planned, as you see listed below. The Human Resource Committee met on February 28, 2024 to review and recommend adjustments to grade scale for certain positions due to market conditions and adjustments to classification of authorized positions. The Finance Committee considered this resolution at its March 6, 2024 meeting and recommending forward to the county board for approval. Fiscal note. This resolution authorized the finance director to take the necessary budget adjustments to enact the resolution. As a budget amendment, this resolution requires 20 of 30 affirmative votes for passage. Explanation of government funds. Non-spendable funds are funds that are included prepaid items, deposits, and inventory accounts. Spendable restricted funds are funds that are legally restricted by statutes, contract, or funding sources. Spendable committed funds are funds that are spendable at the discretion of the county. Explanation of proprietary funds, highway. Capital net position represents items that are depreciated along with land, which is not depreciated. Restricted net position relates to municipal deposits for subsequent year work by the county. Non-restricted net positions includes both required items and discretionary items. Mr. Chair, I move for passage of this resolution.
Mr. Jones moves for passage. Do I have a second? Second from Mr. Jaco. Questions, discussion? This again requires a 2/3 vote.
Supervisor Jones?
Yes.
Supervisor Richardson?
Yes.
Supervisor Herbst?
Yes.
We have 27 yes, 1 no, and 1 absent.
Item C, resolution authorizing the amendment of the state local agreements with Wisconsin Emergency Management for state local hazard mitigation program assistance. Mr. Jones.
Resolution number 2023-82. Jefferson County was the recipient of federal and state grant funding via the Hazard Mitigation Grant Program for the acquisition and demolition of structures located in the floodplain of the Rock River, Bark River, and Lake Koshkonong in Jefferson County. Jefferson County has been working on this flood mitigation project for a few years and is nearing completion. Jefferson County recently requested additional grant funding to reimburse actual costs incurred during the project implementation. FEMA has approved approximately $77,996 in additional funding conditioned upon the receipt of grant cost amendments. This resolution authorizes the county administrator to execute state local hazard mitigation grant program assistant amendments to secure additional funding for the cost of the flood mitigation program. The Finance Committee considered this resolution at its meeting on March 6, 2024, and recommending forward this resolution to the county board for approval. Fiscal note, since this grant amendment reimbursement costs that have already been incurred in past years, no budget amendment is necessary. Mr. Chair, I move for passage of this resolution.
Second.
Second by Supervisor Morris. Questions, discussion? Not all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, the resolution passes. Resolution accepting a bid for demolition of property acquired through the Flood Mitigation and Acquisition Program. This again requires a 2/3 vote. Mr. Jones.
Resolution number 2023-83. Jefferson County has continued to be active in the flood mitigation acquisition program to reduce risk for those properties impacted due to frequent flooding. Since 2008, the county has received numerous grants to accelerate this program in defined areas. The last flood mitigation property acquired by Jefferson County was recently vacated. This property is located at W7696 Black Hawk Island Road in Fort Atkinson. Pursuant to flood mitigation and acquisition program guidelines, after a property is vacated, the county is required to coordinate the demolition of structures on the property to restore it back to a more natural state. On January 16, 2024, Jefferson County Emergency Management issued a request for proposals, RFP, to solicit bids for the demolition, asbestos abatement, well capping, septic system abandonment, and grading of the remaining Black Hawk Island property. Based upon the estimate cost of the project, the request for proposal was published on the county website and sent directly to the 11 contractors in the industry to solicit bids consisting with the county's purchasing ordinance. The deadline for proposals was February 8, 2024. Only one bid was received. 2 contractors responded declining to bid. The lowest qualifying bid was Minocqua Grading LLC with a total cost of $44,600. This resolution authorizes the county administrator to enter into a contract with Minocqua Grading LLC for the demolition work as specified in the RFP at a price of $44,600. On March 6, 2024, the Finance Committee considered the proposal and recommending forward it to the county board for approval. Fiscal note. $100,000 is requested to be carried forward from the 2023 budget to the 2024 for flood mitigation closeout cost. This amount is currently budgeted in contingency. This resolution authorizes the finance director to transfer $44,600 from contingency to the emergency management department's budget to cover the cost of this demolition. This is a budget amendment. 2/3 vote of the entire board is required to pass. 20 of the 30-member board of supervisors. Mr. Chair, I move for passage of this resolution.
Moved by Supervisor Jones, second by Supervisor Morris. Questions? Mr. Brogler.
How many more properties are we still having to look at for this flood mitigation?
So for this current grant cycle and the properties that are identified to be demoed, this would be the very last one. If additional properties would seek to be required, we'd have to go out and solicit more grants and go forward from there. But on this big round of grants, this is the last one.
Any other questions? This requires a 2/3 vote.
Supervisor Jones,
Yes.
Supervisor Richardson,
Yes.
Supervisor Herbst.
Yes.
We have 28 yes and 1 absent.
Takes us to item 12, Human Resources Committee, resolution establishing total annual compensation for county elected officials of county clerk, register of deeds, and treasurer for the fiscal years 2025 through 2028 pursuant to Wisconsin State Statutes 59.22 and Jefferson County Ordinance 2019-18, establishing a procedure to set elected official salaries. Mr. Brogler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With your permission, I would like to defer tonight's reading to our Vice Chairman, Joan Fitzgerald, because this is her last meeting.
Jill.
And as a fellow teacher to Jim over there, can't keep us down. So, resolution number 2023-84. On Thursday, February 28th, 2024, the Human Resources Committee reviewed the current market conditions and trends, the internal comparable wages and salaries from comparable counties for the positions of county clerk, register of deeds, and treasurer. After analyzing this information, the Human Resources Committee is recommending adjusting the annual compensation based on cumulative cost of living increases applied since 2021 for other non-represented positions for the fiscal year 2025, followed by a 3% increase in each year of the 4-year term, 2025 to 2028, of the elected constitutional officers of county clerk, register of deeds, and treasurer. The base salary was established in consideration of Ordinance 2019-18, establishing a procedure to set elected official salaries, which provides for determining the base starting salary for the upcoming term by reference to the step that is at closest to, but not less than, the 70th percentile of comparable counties of the appropriate recommended grade placement, which is grade 12 for the county clerk, register of deeds, and treasurer. Fiscal note. Fiscal impact from 2024 to 2025, the established salary of $92,185.60 has a fiscal impact of $7,841.60 for each position of county clerk, register of deeds, and treasurer, or $23,524.80 total. Fiscal impact from 2025 to 2026, the established salary of $94,952 has a fiscal impact of $2,766.40 for each position, or $8,299.20 total. Fiscal impact from 2026 to 2027, the established salary of $97,801.60 has a fiscal impact of $2,849.60 for each position, or $8,548.80 total. Fiscal impact from 2027 to 2028, the established salary of $100,734.40 has a fiscal impact of $2,932.80 for each position, or $8,798.40 total. The total fiscal impact for the 4-year term for each position is $16,390.40, or $49,171.20 total. The total cumulative fiscal impact for the 4-year term is $48,297.60 for each position, or $144,892.80 total. These impacts, along with the corresponding increases in Federal Insurance Contributions Act, FICA tax, Wisconsin Retirement System employer contribution, health, and other eligible fringe benefits, will be part of the budget process for each budget year. Mr. Chair, I move for passage of this resolution.
Moved by Supervisor Fitzgerald, second by Supervisor Brogler. Questions? Discussion? All I can say is this is so much easier than it used to be. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Hearing none, the resolution passes. Human Resources Board proclamation proclaiming the month of April 2024 as Child Abuse Neglect Prevention Month. Mr. Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Proclamation number 2023-5. Thank you. Whereas child abuse and neglect is a complex and ongoing problem in our society, affecting many children in Jefferson County, and whereas every child is entitled to be loved, cared for, nurtured, feel secure, and be free from verbal, sexual, emotional, and physical abuse and neglect. And whereas it is the responsibility of every adult who comes in contact with a child to protect that child's inalienable right to a safe and nurturing childhood. And whereas Jefferson County has many dedicated individuals and organizations who work daily to encounter the problem of child maltreatment and to help parents obtain the assistance they need. And whereas our communities are stronger when all citizens become aware of child maltreatment prevention and become involved in supporting parents to raise their children in a safe and nurturing environment. And whereas effective child abuse prevention programs succeed because of partnership among families, social service agencies, schools, religious and civic organizations, law enforcement agencies, and the business community. And whereas the Human Service Board at its February 13th, 2024 meeting voted to forward this proclamation to the County Board of Supervisors for adoption. Now therefore be it resolved that the Jefferson County Board of Supervisors hereby proclaims the month of April 2024 to be Child Abuse and Neglect Prevention Month. Fiscal note, adoption of this proclamation will not have any fiscal impact to the county other than the expenditure of staff time. Promotion materials will be funded by outside private donations. Mr. Chair, I move for passage of this proclamation.
I have a second from Supervisor Morris. Any questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, proclamation passes. Item 14, Parks Committee, resolution authorizing county administrator to contract with KL Engineering for construction administration and oversight of Jefferson County Interurban Trail Recreation Bridge Phase 3 project. Mr. Christensen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have resolution number 2023-85. Jefferson County is continuing construction of a multi-use recreational trail on utility right-of-way owned by We Energies. The proposed trail is 10.96 miles and is located on the former interurban rail line between the city of Watertown and the city of Oconomowoc. The path cross-section will consist of a 10-foot wide asphalt surface with 2-foot wide aggregate shoulders. The project includes 10 miles of trail within Jefferson County and 1 mile of trail in Waukesha County. The city of Watertown and the city of Oconomowoc are the project boundaries. The trail will act as an extension of the Lake Country Trail and eventually connect to the city of Pewaukee. 2 of the 3 phases of construction have been completed, including 7 miles of trail and one 3-span 270-foot recreation bridge. Multiple federal and state grants have been awarded for the 3rd phase of the project, totaling $1,735,665. The first part of Phase 3 includes building and installing a 2-span, 150-foot-long recreation bridge over the Rock River between County Highway F and Rockvale Road in the town of Ixonia. The bridge incorporates the original electric rail car abutments and piers. Design, engineering, and permitting has been completed. Due to the complexity of the project and the Due to the complexity of the project and the extensive retrofitting and repair required, the Jefferson County Parks Department requested a proposal from KL Engineering for construction administration to commence when the notice to proceed has been issued. Jefferson County Parks Committee has reviewed the proposal by KL Engineering to provide these services and feel it would be in the county's best interest to continue to utilize KL Engineering services through the project's completion. This resolution authorized the county administrator to enter into a contract with KL Engineering for construction administration and oversight related to the completion of the recreation bridge in Phase 3 of the Interurban Trail Project. The Parks Committee considered this resolution at its meeting on March 7, 2024, and recommended forwarding to the County Board for approval. The fiscal note. Jefferson County Board of Supervisors has authorized $300,243.43 to be carried forward from the 2023 budget to the 2024 budget for Interurban Trail Phase 3 seed money. This contract will be paid for with that budget carried forward. Mr. Chairman, I move for adoption of this resolution.
Moved by Supervisor Christensen, second by Supervisor Gulick. Questions? Discussion? I only wish Supervisor Augie Teets was still here to see this. He worked on this for 15 years. All in favor of this resolution, say aye.
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 Opposed? No. One opposed. Passes voice. Takes us to item 15, Planning and Zoning Committee, ordinance amending the Jefferson County Comprehensive Plan and Agricultural Preservation Land Use Plan. Mr. Jekyll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ordinance number 2023-26.
Yep.
Whereas Jefferson County Planning and Zoning Committee requests a comprehensive plan and agricultural preservation land use plan be amended, and whereas the amendment allows a limited redivision of A3 agricultural rural residential zone lots created prior to February 8th, 2000, and whereas the Planning and Zoning Committee adopted a public participation plan on September 12, 2023 to guide the process of amending the plans, and whereas the duly noticed public hearing for the Planning and Zoning Committee was held on December 21st, 2023, and a public hearing of the County Board was held on March 12th, 2024, and whereas
The Planning and Zoning Committee recommended adoption of the text amendment to the Comprehensive Plan and Agricultural Preservation and Land Use Plan on December 28, 2023. Now therefore be it resolved, be it ordained that pursuant to Wisconsin Statute 66 1.1001 and Chapter 91 of the Jefferson County Comprehensive Plan and Jefferson County Agricultural Preservation and Land Use Plan is hereby amended based on the recommendation of the Planning and Zoning Committee as set forth in the attached resolution incorporated by reference. Fiscal note, the fiscal impact associated with this ordinance cannot be determined at this time. The following 3 pages are in your packet are the resolution committee shared and brought forward before. So I move for adoption of this ordinance, Mr. Chair.
Second. Moved by Mr. Jacobs, second by Mr. Paulson. Questions? Discussion? Supervisor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. 4 of the towns, when they were asked if they approve this, said they do not. Town of Astelan, Town of Concord, Town of Ixonia, and Town of Lake Mills. And some of the reasons they gave include that it's not in conjunction with their town comprehensive plans, the plans they spent a lot of town funds to establish. One town did not return paperwork formally indicating whether they approve it or they do not approve it. So 5 towns did not approve it, 11 towns did. When we do the math, that's a pretty high percentage of towns that did not explicitly approve this. So I am going to be voting against this. Thank you.
Supervisor Callen had her hand up next.
I'm just wondering if I can get an explanation of what is the need for this amendment and why was it introduced? And regarding the specific date of February 8th, 2000, what's the difference in those properties from anything after that?
I can do that unless Matt would like to. Is Matt here yet? Yeah, he's back there. Matt, would you like to explain? Otherwise, I will. Go for it. Okay. You can correct. The reason is that the date is that it was when our current comprehensive plan was done. So these were A3 rezones prior to that from 2000 to, I believe, 1975 when we had our zoning. So these are large A3 lots located out in rural areas. Some can be 8-10 acres. And what we felt was that we would allow these to be subdivided into further A3 lots because rather than using prime farmland or virgin farmland, these are already A3 areas and they would automatically be clustered as our comprehensive plan requires. Need to add anything on to that?
No, I think that was a good explanation. One point I would add is it also then helps with housing in the county, as that's a goal of the strategic plan, helping allow more housing in those already existing A3 zones. One point of clarification, there was 12 towns approved it and 4 towns denied it or did not approve for it. That 5th town, we did get the response shortly after the Planning and Zoning Committee met in December, end of December into January. And one other point, this is just for the comprehensive plan and farmland preservation plan amendment. There's also a zoning text amendment that'll follow this if approved.
And I would, to answer Ms. Williams' question, I misspoke. They do not have veto power, but they review these like they would any other split, more like a conditional use, where they would advise the committee. Supervisor Treville Heights.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My main question was, is there some sort of a rubric or something else to help in determining when these are appropriate to be split? I didn't really see that other than in the following ordinance recommendations. It really sounded more like just the standard review. So I was looking to find out how we were going to make a decision that you aren't going to end up having high-density areas and areas where everybody's got septic systems, et cetera.
Do you want to address that, Matt? I saw you standing up.
Sure. The comprehensive plan, the section that we're amending, doesn't have specific details. That was left more open-ended based on what the previous one was of just straight prohibiting it. Then the text amendment references back the comprehensive plan and farmland preservation plan. So the intent then is to follow the general A3 zoning standards that are already in the comprehensive plan and farmland preservation plans. So clustering, lot size, access requirements, those same things that the committee would look at for just a general rezone would be what they'd be looking at for this land division quote.
Supervisor Smith.
During public comment, somebody had commented on one of these resolutions. I'm wondering if you could tell me which one it was.
This one.
You know, we've got 4 resolutions. I'm assuming they were referring to one of them.
Oh, well,
It
yeah.
could be this one or it could be the next one
one.
with
They're
the text
similar.
amendment. That one's a little more in-depth in the actual process.
Yeah, one's
This is the plan or the concept of it, more or less.
Well, yeah, one's the concept, the other's the actual text of the plan. Other questions? Supervisor Turville Heights.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If you could just clarify a little bit more, I didn't really hear the address of the issue of wells and septics in the clustered area.
They would,
To be evaluated to ensure that safety in those situations.
we do that with every A3 lot we do now already. Whether it's they all do this. This is required by law. Matt, you want to address that?
Sure. The current regulations don't have any density standards for number of wells or septics in a specific location. I'm not aware of any really throughout the state. Maybe there are some here and there. Other than that, the only other restrictions would be just general setbacks between wells and septics. They can only be so close to property lines, so close to each other, so on and so forth.
And they have to perk like for a septic system or whatever else, like they would for any A3 lot.
Yeah, the septic systems are permitted and go through a permitting process, which includes reviewing the soils and the depth to groundwater.
Other questions? Seeing none? Would you voice vote or would you like a
Roll call, please.
roll call? Okay, requested roll call vote.
Supervisor Jones,
Strawberry lemonade packet that looks like this.
sorry, Supervisor Jones,
That might have been a yes.
Yes.
thank you. Supervisor Richardson,
Yes.
Supervisor Herbst,
Yes.
Oh my God.
we have 20 yes, 8 no, and 1 absent. I'm working on it.
Takes us to item B, ordinance amending section 11.04 F8, A3 agricultural and rural residential provisions of Jefferson County zoning ordinance.
Thank you,
Mr. Jekyll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ordinance number 2023-27. Jefferson County Planning and Zoning Department has reviewed Jefferson County zoning ordinance and recommends the ordinance be amended to allow the limited redivision of A3 agricultural and rural residential zone lots. The proposed amendments would allow A3 zone lots created prior to February 8th, 2000 be divided. February 8th, 2020 is the date the county adopted the first comprehensive plan, which included the current A3 zoning provisions. The full proposed language follows this summary. The majority of towns subject to county zoning approve of the proposed language amendment. Of the 16 towns, 12 approved the amendment and 4 did not approve the amendment. The Astalon, Concord, Ixonia, and Lake Mills. A public hearing was held on this text amendment on December 21st, 2023. Planning and Zoning Committee considered this ordinance amendment on December 28th, 2023, and recommended following it to the county board for adoption. You can see the rest of everything that's underlined. It's pretty self-explanatory of how we were looking to, amend or change the ordinance. The fiscal impact of this ordinance cannot be determined at this time. Mr. Chairman, I move for ordinance 27.
Second. Second by Supervisor Paulson, moved by Supervisor Jekyll. Questions, discussion? Again, I want to reiterate that we already require in our comprehensive plan to be clustered. This allows us another tool to keep them clustered rather than moving them out into farm fields. Seeing no questions, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
The voice vote has it. Item C, report. Mr. Jekyll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Report to the honorable members of Jefferson County Board of Supervisors. Jefferson County Planning and Zoning Committee, having considered petitions to amend the official zoning map of Jefferson County, filed for public hearing held on February 15th, 2024, as required by law pursuant to Wisconsin statutes. Notice thereof having been given and being duly advised of the wishes of the town boards and persons in the areas affected, hereby makes the following recommendations. Approval of petitions as listed, dated this 29th day of February 2024, Blaine Paulson, Secretary.
And moving to the ordinance then?
Ordinance number 2023-28. Whereas Jefferson County Board of Supervisors heretofore been petitioned to amend the official zoning map of Jefferson County, and I would move to amend as listed.
Second. Second by Supervisor Morris. Questions? Discussion? Supervisor Kennard.
I will abstain for potential conflict of interest.
Duly noted. Any other questions, discussion? All in favor of this ordinance, say aye. 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 Opposed? Hearing none, the ordinance passes. Takes us to item 16, appointments by the county administrator. Mr. Waymeyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have two appointments for the board's consideration and confirmation tonight. First is under authority vested in me in section 59.18, parent 2, parent C, Wisconsin statute. I respectfully request confirmation of the following appointment of Mr. Stephen Ganser of Jefferson, Wisconsin, to the Human Services Board to fill an unexpired term ending November 1st, 2024. I respectfully request a confirmation.
Move to confirm.
Second.
Second by Supervisor Backlund. Questions, discussion? All in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? Hearing none. And
the second is filling on one of our department head roles. And tonight I'd like to introduce Rebecca Roberts as our new Fair Park Director. Before I officially request for a confirmation, Becky went through a lot as we look for the next director. We had a pretty good turn of applications for the Fair Park Director with a diverse group of skill sets. And Becky brings to us an undergraduate degree in tourism and hospitality from UW Stout. She has over 7 years of experience in tourism and convention experience, 20 plus experience in the hospitality industry where she did everything. She's currently executive vice president where she's running budgets, programs, she's running special events, and everything else that she's been asked to do, running teams, customer service. A lot of key things as we look for the next skill sets of the director is what we were looking for. She had to go through 2 rounds of interview. I always like try to highlight that to the county board so you knew what we asked them to do. The preliminary round was the general review of the resume, asked various questions about background, why this position, why you. She asked us some good questions back in many cases because we always like them to interview us too because it's a fit for them. But then the second round of interviews, we always kick it off with homework, I like to say. And Becky enjoyed that. But she came in with 2 things. One is a marketing piece when you're asking for sponsors and kind of what is that elevator pitch? You're out networking and talking to people. What are you going to talk about the Fair Park? And second is strategically talking about how does the Fair Park fit into our overall plan as a county? as a marketing effort of not only talking about the fair park, but talking about the county as a whole and how does that fit in a strategic plan. So she did a wonderful presentation on that hit a lot of highlights. But she kind of took us to the curveball, but she was out the box thinking when we talked about the elevator pitch. And she actually created multiple platforms for the Fair Park, but also Fair Week herself, because in her opinion, as she's looking at the elevator pitch, they're two distinct things. And so she really wowed us with how we talked, and those references she had really reinforced it. I think the highlight for us is just the go-to attitude, wanting to get in there and doing things, looking creative. We talked a lot about at hotels, like all of a sudden you got this thing called a parking lot, and how do you create more event space? We have big events. She helped create a Beloit Film Festival and just some of the nuances behind there and the success behind that and the conversations we had behind that. And so the first round we had members of the Fair Park Advisory Board and Committee along with staff. In the second round we had additional Fair Park Advisory Board members and Fair Park Committee. So it was not just staff who looked at this from a stakeholder standpoint. So universally, she was our recommendation. So with all that being said, officially tonight under section 59.18 parent 2 parent B of Wisconsin statute, I respectfully request a confirmation of Ms. Rebecca Roberts as Fair Park Director for indeterminate term. I respectfully request confirmation.
So moved. Second. So moved by Supervisor Paulson, second by Supervisor Backlund. Any questions, discussions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Welcome.
And I think Becky would quick formally introduce herself to you all. So Becky, do you want to quick take a few minutes?
Sure.
I like to see faces. And I'm a talker, so I know it's been a long night. I'll cut myself off appropriately. But hello, and thank you for your trust.
Please use the mic.
Yes,
so they can hear you online.
Thank you for the confirmation. I appreciate the trust. I'm very excited to get started, which will be mid-April. So you'll start to see my face. I'll probably be knocking on doors, probably asking for some favors along the way. Certainly excited about the fair coming up in July. We've got a lot of work to do. So just in the interest of time and of all of your energy tonight, thank you for your trust. I'm very excited. Thank you.
Thank you. Good luck, Rebecca. And takes us to item 17, appointments by Human Services Board. Supervisor Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. By virtue of the authority vested in the Human Service Board under Section 3.06, Sub 1, Sub G of the County Board Rules, the Human Service Board hereby requests County Board confirmation of the following appointments. John Donahue, Fort Atkinson, Wisconsin, to the Aging Disability Resource Center Committee, ADRC, to fill an unexpired term ending July 1, 2025. And Todd Wiedenheif, Johnson Creek, Wisconsin, Aging and Disability Resource Advisory Committee, ADRC, to fill an unexpired term ending July 1, 2026. Mr. Chair, I move for confirmation of these two candidates.
Moved by Supervisor Jones. Do I have a second? Second by Supervisor Jekyll. Questions? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. They are appointed. Public comment of a general nature. I didn't see any listed here.
I have a public comment of a general nature.
Okay.
Doing a little shout out for the Farm Bureau. They're going to have a meat raffle at the Atstall Inn on April 13th. It's from 11 to 4. And they're going to be featuring agricultural businesses. They're all going to, number of different, a lot of different companies, different butchers, probably, bees, anything affiliated with the agriculture industry. It's going to be at the Atstall Land. So be patient with us. It's the first time we're doing this. To hopefully it'll be small, but hopefully can grow like different other events that I've been affiliated with. So hope to see you there, and I'll be doing the promo again for the fair. And then Anita, she grabbed some tonight from me for doing sponsors, and I got some more copies here if anybody else wants to, see if they're out in the public and can find some sponsors for the fair. All right, thank you.
Thank you. We'll list that under announcements. Any other public comment? Mr. Smith.
As my political career comes to a second and hopefully final ending, since I won't be winning with my typical 2 votes, I wanted to say thank you, Mr. Chairman, for my committee assignments.
that I know they're appointed positions and I would be happy to fulfill or continue on them. I'm not sure where my term is or whatever, but in the event I'm needed, I'm happy to continue. It's with these board meetings that I find at times frustrating because I can't help but feel I either fail at my job or I feel I fail at doing a better job than I'm doing when this board makes some of the decisions that it does. And while Martin Luther King had a dream, I have a direction. And something I've just done is created an LLC. And hopefully within about a year, I can address 10.4 of the current strategic plan. So hopefully I will become a better former supervisor than I was supervisor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith, and thank you for your service. Mr. Smith Goes to Jefferson, is what we call this in this movie. Well, there's Mr. Smith Goes to Washington was a famous movie. But I want to let the board know that that Supervisor Smith has agreed to stay on the Railroad Commission for now. He was appointed in place of resignation, and he can take over the citizen role, and I'll leave that up to when we do committees again, but thank you for that offer.
Okay.
Anything else? Announcements or Supervisor Christensen?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I'd like to announce the upcoming fourth grade farm tour, which will be conducted at the Coots Farm annual event. What I don't have the date right in front of me, so maybe Meg remembers, or somebody remembers, but it's coming up pretty soon. What I'm here mostly to ask for is if we could have one or two volunteers to help with the fourth grade farm tour. You've heard me say this before. It's really a blast to see those kids come around, and they're very excited to learn new things. So if you want to help out, give me a call, and we'll get you lined up. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other announcements? Supervisor Martin.
Walt? Oh, sorry, Nita. It's May 1st. This is Supervisor Richardson.
What's going on here?
Okay, sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt. I had to delay in my discussion. The farm tour is Wednesday, May 1st.
All right. Thank you very much, Cassie. Supervisor Martin.
So we do have a clean sweep recycling event coming up on Friday, April 5th from 3 to 5:30 p.m. and then on Saturday, April 6th from 8 until 11 a.m. This is a different location than we've had before. We are using the Jefferson County Parks Maintenance Facility, which is great because it'll give us hopefully plenty of room and we won't be conflicting with anything else that's going on. And, that's off of Highway J, so people are encouraged to follow the signs off of Collins Road. Registration is required, 920-674-7430. $10 for a carload or vehicle load full of whatever stuff that you would like to get rid of that says danger warning, caution, poisons, flammable, or corrosive. Businesses will be charged according to the weight. Thank you.
That's the Highway Department?
Yeah, it's the Highway Department, right? The Highway Department building. Thank you.
No,
It's the Parks Building.
Parks Maintenance Building.
Parks Maintenance Building. It's off of Collins Road.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Oh, Mr. Waymire.
So as this is the last county board meeting of this term, just a couple notes for everybody as we transition out, going into new board members and current board members who will be moving forward. So in terms of outgoing board members who will not be returning, we'll be looking at times to get your tablets back. So I'll kind of talk to you all about when you might have committee assignments that you might need them for, or continue to look at emails. So we'll coordinate that. We'll plan on emails ceasing in your current role on midnight of the 15th of April, since that's officially when your term will cease. So if you need to look at emails for that, please plan on that accordingly. As a reminder to all board members and new board members, on April 9th, we'll be having orientation. We'll send some more details out, but we do plan to kick it off at 6 o'clock with a meet and greet with department heads and a dinner, followed by the formal orientation for the usual by Corporation Counsel in terms of open meetings, ethics, parliamentary, overview of the agenda coming up, looking at the election rules, and some other items that have been put together going forward. And then just as a reminder, on the 16th, and we'll continue to remind everybody, the third Tuesday of the month is the regular board meeting, third Tuesday at 4 o'clock. And that's so if folks need to go to their town, villages, or city meetings on the same day, they have the ability to do so. So we'll remind everybody going forward. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
What time was the orientation?
We'll start dinner at 6, and the formal part will start at 7. And then those who might need some MIS help, we're going to work with them about having some services up beforehand.
Thank you. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved by Supervisor Jacobs, second by Supervisor Sturville Heights. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Hearing none. We're adjourned.